Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you how I make this scarf. It's made with an interesting stitch combination that is a slip stitch followed by a chain, which is similar to the moss stitch, also known as linen stitch or granite stitch, which is a single crochet followed by a chain. However, this material is very stretchy compared to using moss stitch. Notice how stretchy that is, and yet it shrinks back to its original size beautifully. I did this scarf with medium number 4 weight yarn. It's Red Heart Super Saver in the color Artist Print. And I did not do any kind of treatment on the ends other than just the pattern itself. This is my favorite scarf to wear. It's not very big or heavy or bulky. It's actually pretty thin and very supple, but it's very warm because of the fact that it's so dense, and yet it's stretchy. Adding the chains in between the slip stitches makes the fabric very light and supple compared to solid slip stitch only fabric. This is a swatch that I worked with 100% cotton yarn. The yarn is Hobby Lobby. I love this cotton, and the color is curry. And notice again how stretchy the fabric is, and yet it easily goes back to the original size. I want you to notice a few things about this. These are the rows back and forth, and so you see the horizontal lines, but you also see some faint vertical lines because of the bumps. Since this stitch is worked in the back loops of the chains, it makes a different appearance than if you just had solid slip stitch only fabric. I started this swatch down here. I chained my desired number, which in this case is, well, in the case of this particular stitch, it's always an odd number. Then I did a row, the second row, well actually it's the first row that's worked into the foundation chain, is all slip stitches. But then working back is when I started the every other stitch pattern. And I do have a written pattern for this. If you're interested, there will be a link that you can find the written pattern. Now I also want you to notice that, now this is just a swatch. You could add some more rows and make a lovely dishcloth out of this. It feels very soft and supple. Great dishcloth material. On this end, I tried adding a little bit of an edging, which really wasn't all that necessary, but I was just playing around. So I just did a slip stitch, chain one, slip stitch, chain one, etc. across. And I worked only in every other row. If you look at the edge, you can see some pretty big holes. I just worked into those holes. So for instance, here's the scarf. If I were to do a similar edging, you kind of stretch it apart and you can see just in front of every ridge there is a little bit larger hole. I don't know if you can see that. But as I said, on this fabric I did not need any additional stitching along the edge. Now back to my swatch, I did do another type of edge, and on this one I worked in those same stitches, just every other row, but I just did slip stitches and I tried to keep them loose. Anyway, it gave me a very nice appearance along this edge, and because it's slip stitches, it's not as stretchy. I'm stretching it out as far as it'll go, but you can see that the fabric itself is much stretchier than that. So if you want a stabilizing edge, just do a slip stitch in every other row. And here's a comparison between the original swatch I was just talking about, which is done with a 5.0 millimeter hook and medium weight yarn. And I did this one using a smaller hook, a 4.25 millimeter hook, same yarn, same stitch pattern, and you can just see the difference. The smaller hook yields a more smooth looking fabric, which you may want or you may not want. But it also is quite stretchy and goes back to its original shape quite easily. Okay, I'm going to show you how I end a row and start a row and a few stitches of the row. I've just completed a row, so my next step is to do 2 chains. And to make it easier to find it when I get back to the other end, I am putting a stitch marker in that second chain, and it doesn't matter which loop I put it into. Okay, so I now have the 2 chains, second chain, first chain, and here is the first stitch that we are not working into. We're not working into either of these 2 chains, not working into the first stitch of the row. Instead, we're coming over here and working into this stitch, which happens to be the back loop of a chain. So every stitch in this pattern is done in the back loops of the chains. So yarn over, pull through all the loops. Now at this point, I turn the work over and continue working. So we skip the next stitch and work in the following stitch. But first we chain, skip that one, work into the back loop of that one, slip stitch, chain 1. Skip the next, back loop, slip stitch, chain 1. One more time. Skip 1, slip stitch, back loop, chain 1. Notice something interesting about this edge. There is kind of a little left-right pattern on these V's along this edge. The one V kind of aims off to the right like your right foot, and the other one aims off to the left like your left foot. So you've got right, left, left, left. And we're going to be working into the chains, and the way you can tell which one is the chain is it's the one that's aiming to the right, at least if you're a right-handed crocheter. So can you see, I don't know if it's even visible on this camera, but I'm skipping the one that's aiming off to the left or up, and I'm working into the one that's aiming downward or to the right. Chain 1, skip 1. Okay, I'll work to the end and show you what to do next. Okay, I am almost at the end. Let me see if I can get in there even closer. Can't seem to at this point. So we have a few stitches left. We're going to skip this one, work into this one, skip this one, and the last one that we work into is kind of hard to find. It's way down there, which is why I use a stitch marker, and I forgot to put one in this stitch, but that's okay because this will help you find it even if you forgot a stitch marker. Okay, so I've done my chain 1, I skip 1, slip stitch in the back loop, chain 1, and skip this one, and there we have that little booger down in there. Slip stitch in that stitch, and we finish the row, and then we start again with the next row, and remember to put a stitch marker in the second stitch, which will make it easy to find when it's hiding. So then once again we skip the first stitch and work into the next one, back loop only, slip stitch, chain 1, and this is where I start moving the fabric around to make it easier. Skip 1, slip stitch in the back loop, chain 1, skip 1, slip stitch in the back loop. Hopefully that has given you enough of an idea that will get you going on trying this stitch. Something else I want to mention, try really hard to keep your tension the same, because if you get looser tension, it's going to make your rows longer or wider, and you'll have a wonky edge over here, which is easier said than done, I know. Thank you so much for watching.